Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. I have a little mini slimline card today, which is unusual for me, and I'm going to start off with a piece of vellum. I'm going to be using up some things in my little craft space that have been sitting around. So to begin with and create a really subtle background, I'm going to be using this Leaf Clusters stamp set. Again, one of my absolute favorites, and I know you've seen it lots, but using it lots means that we're getting really good value from it as well. You can use any stamps that you have in your stash for this at all. Anything is going to work. And I'm just going to pop some VersaMark sticky embossing ink, and I'm going to pop this down onto my piece of vellum. My vellum is slightly bigger than what I needed at the moment. I end up cutting it down just a fraction, and I quite like being able to do that later on. I think I end up cutting off maybe an 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch off two of the sides later. But I am just popping this down, and I know that you can't see, but I can see if I tilt this in the light, and just with my filming lights, I can see where the sticky embossing ink is. And so I'm just trying to make this little panel relatively full of the leaves, and I just chose this stamp because it was kind of the biggest leaf cluster in the stamp set. Then I'm going to take some clear embossing powder and pop this over the vellum. Now you can kind of see when I turn it in the light, you can see where it is, and then once I put the embossing powder on, you can see all of those gorgeous leaves show up. However, once I start embossing this and adding the heat to it, they're pretty much going to disappear. As I said, this is just a way of having a really subtle background. Now, I use the Lawn Fawn vellum. This is for a couple of reasons. One, I can heat emboss on this. Some vellums, when you try to heat emboss them, they will curl up and crinkle up because they are not meant for heat embossing. Two, I can do dry embossing, pop this through with embossing folders, and it doesn't crack. So that is really important to me. And I can do so many techniques with just this one type of vellum. It's the vellum that I love, and it's the vellum that I'm going to stick with because I really like it when one product does multiple things. So you can see that gorgeous little subtle background that we have there, and if you tilt it in the light you can see the image, but it really is not going to take away from the main focus that we have created for our focal point today. Speaking of, I'm going to be using some Rub-Ons. I bought a couple of packs of these recently, a little while ago actually, and they've just been kind of sitting there. I used up bits and pieces of them for a couple of videos. I actually kind of felt like I rediscovered them, and I love these. I think these are really good value, and I have these gorgeous butterflies. Here you can see all 6 pages that come in this package, and I don't know if this one is available anymore. I believe that these may have been shifted on, but honestly, the 49er market, I really like their Rub-Ons. I really think that they're good value, and they also stick really well. I have had some cards that I made months ago using them, and there's no sign of any wear or looking anything other than a perfect stamp. So I also cut out some dark grey squares. I think these are 1.5 inches squared, but just make it to fit your card. Then I have those white panels there, which are just a fraction smaller. I'm going to cut out 3 different butterflies. I decided to kind of go 2 yellows and an orangey, pinky, kind of corally colour. But I was just picking out 3 that were going to work well and kind of thinking about which pattern I would like. I wanted to choose that one there that was kind of, it has a different shape to it, so that's going to work really well for just looking a little bit different rather than 3 exact butterflies. And then in the same pack, I have these here, which I've obviously used some in a previous video, but I thought, why not pop some of these down first? This is going to provide a little bit of noise and a little bit of texture in the background without taking over. I really like the kind of dull, muted colors of these. But I like that little bit of text. I didn't think the plant ones went quite as well. The foliage went quite as well, but I'm going to take out these little text ones. And again, it's just about kind of seeing what we have in our stash and making sure that I don't just use something out of it that I caught my eye to begin with, and that I keep coming back, because I think these products really are worthwhile. But if you have them in your stash, then you need to use them. Otherwise, then that's when they become not worthwhile purchasing. So I'm just going to cut little bits here. And again, these Rub-Ons are really easy to use. You obviously just cut out what you need. You take off one piece of the release paper and pop them down. And then they do provide that little tool, but anything that you have in your stash, you can just rub over them, and they, as I said, stay on really nicely without having to put on like a top coat or a layer or anything. I was really surprised and glad of how well these lasted throughout time. I also actually popped to a friend's house the other day and saw that she had one of the original cards I had made I don't even know, months and months ago, up on her windowsill that had used these rub-ons, and again, they still look perfect. So it's always really nice to see what your cards look like in a few months' time to make sure that nothing is kind of peeling or coming away, or the corners are coming up or anything like that. So it's always good to see and make sure that these products are good quality. So I am just putting on a little bit of text in each one. I'm trying to pop it kind of in a different corner or a different space for each one. Then I peel off the release paper from the butterflies, and of course these are small little squares, so they are going to come off the sides a little bit, and I know that's a little bit sad but it just is what it is. And if you see any little bit there that you didn't quite kind of get down with your little stick, then just pop it back down and keep pressing with your little tool, and then they will stick perfectly well. Again, lots of these butterflies, these kind of bigger open wing butterflies, are going to be off the edge, but I would rather use these up than kind of sit and look at them and wait for the absolute perfect project, because I would happily hoard things like this because they are so pretty. But at least if I use them, then more people can enjoy them, and it does make me feel good when I'm using up the supplies that I invested in and purchased. So this gorgeous final big butterfly here, and I'm just going to cut off those extra little bits of wings. And then that just makes for really clean edges. You can fold them around the back, but I quite like when I cut them, as I said, it just makes nice and clean. Then all I'm going to do with the little white panels is pop them down onto that grey panel, and that just provides a gorgeous little border that's going to stick off our page a little bit more. I'm using some Ranger Multimedium in the matte finish. That's the glue that is inside these glue bottles, and I just pop the glue in myself using a syringe. I have a video on my channel, but if you just search YouTube how to fill a glue bottle, then it'll pop up first, and it's a really mess-free and stress-free way to fill up your little squeezy bottles. These are the best bottles. I've had them for years now, never replaced them. I absolutely love them. You can see now I have trimmed down my panel just a tiny little bit so that the vellum comes inside of the white cardstock just a little bit. I'm going to have these 3 butterflies going down the front, and I'm going to try and space these out evenly. I do put some double-sided tape on the back of each of them. I prefer to use double-sided tape over liquid glues when using vellum, because obviously vellum cannot withstand too much wet liquid. That's going to make it kind of want to bend and curl. But also I just find that this adheres really nice and quickly, so I definitely always gravitate towards double-sided tape when I am adhering onto vellum. So I've got the order that I want to go, and I have removed the release paper from the bottom butterfly only, just so I can kind of get an idea of placement. And then once I pop this one down, I am truly eyeballing it, and it's not going to be perfect, but I just do my best. Then with the top one, I'm actually going to turn it up the other way just because I'm right-handed and that works easier for me, and then bring in a T-ruler just so it lines up with the top one especially. T-rulers are a great, very inexpensive tool to have in your little craft stash for lining up sentiments, lining up anything that you are popping down, letters or little projects like this. It is going to be perfect for helping you get things straight. Then I'm going to pop that vellum on top of the card and just make sure that everything kind of lines up perfectly, that I have all my spacing as good as I'm going to get it, and I don't need to trim anything. Before each step that I take in my card making, I try to make sure I can double check before I kind of stick or glue or move something. And then once I am happy, I'm going to pop these butterflies down with some double-sided tape behind each of the butterflies, and again that way it's all going to be hidden from with the vellum. Of course you need to be careful with adhesive showing through vellum, but there is plenty holding this sheet down onto the card, and the vellum is nice and sturdy and a heavy enough weight that it's not going to bend up or anything at the corners. And then again, I just really like that subtle background of the embossing that we did. You can see it kind of move in the light there. Now I did want to show you quickly how I make my envelopes, because this card is just a random size. I think it's 3.5 by 6.5 or 7 inches or something like that. I take a piece of paper, I think this one is 8.5 by 11. It doesn't matter what size it is, big enough so that I know I can fold it around my card that I have created, and then I undo the sides, and I'm going to hold the card in place in the middle. I don't want to shift it. Then I'm going to pop up the bottom and then pop over the top, and that gives me the kind of lines that I need to create my envelopes. I make most of my envelopes from scratch these days. I just find it's a really good way to use up excess paper and things. I'm going to take some long bladed scissors and just cut out the corners. It probably would have been better to take some sharp fussy cutting scissors so that I can just get in those corners nice and easy. But I do actually have a whole video where I show you the 3 different ways that I create envelopes. This is the only way I do for creating slimline cards. And of course, I can cut some excess off the top and the bottom here because my slimline card is not that long. If yours is a little bit longer, then it's going to fit that piece of paper a little bit better than mine did today. But we can cut everything down round the top and the bottom corners just so it kind of gives it that nice finished edge, really nice. But as I said, I have that video that shows you all the different ways. So I have one for normal cards like 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, then slightly larger cards, and then a couple of different ways to do that, and then how I make slimline cards and the envelopes to fit those. And it's just it's a nice, quick, efficient, short video that just shows you how I make them. So once I know that my card definitely fits in, then I just add a little bit of double-sided tape around some of the edges. I'm going to add 1 piece down the long edge, and then I'm going to add a shorter piece on the top and the bottom. I will take off the bottom kind of piece of release paper, but the top one I will leave on until I am popping this in and I've written in the card and everything is finished, and this will kind of close up the envelope. I like the idea of having pattern paper on the inside, and then that keeps the outside of the envelope really nice. And of course, again, I'm just using up what I have in my stash of these larger pieces of patterned paper that often kind of sit around, so it's really nice to be able to use them up and kind of have something that coordinates really nicely. And then here is my finished envelope. As I said, I'll leave that top one on until I actually send it, but it looks just like any other envelope, and my card fits in really nicely. That's why it's good to check a couple of times to make sure you've kind of folded not too tight around the card when you create the envelope. So pop it in and out, and then that is our custom envelope for our gorgeous card today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I will leave links to all the products in the description box below this video in case you are interested in checking anything out. But other than that, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.